All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Anthony Garza, and welcome to our webinar today on data integration for fringe benefit tracking and administration with FCE and LoadTrek to reduce your workload and make everything easier to manage. Online today, we have myself and Chris Porter from FCE Benefit Administrators and Joel Beal from LoadTrek Software. How you doing today, Joel and Chris?
Good, thank you.
We're doing
How about
good.
yourself?
Doing great, thanks guys. Thanks for being here today. So what we wanted to talk about today is how to automate data flowing when you have fringe benefits that have to be paid out because they're subject to Service Contract Act, Davis-Bacon Act, or any of the related legislation that requires a fringe benefits to be paid. And in some cases, when you have particularly truck drivers, they may have different contract rates that have to be paid, throughout the day. That generates a lot of overhead, a lot of administrative work. So we're here to talk about how to kind of put that on autopilot. I think anytime you can take a business process and automate it and kind of set it and forget it, that's a win. So we're going to start talking about a little bit of how to do that today. Let's start with LoadTrek, just some quick introductions on LoadTrek and FCE. Joel, do you want to tell us real quick what LoadTrek is all about?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. LoadTrek, we're a transportation management system, and we exist to help trucking fleets plan, organize, dispatch, and track their work. Much of what we do is with federal contractors. That's why FCE and us work so well together, because we really deal with a lot of the same companies. We exist solely to help companies plan, organize, track their work so that you can compare your actual performance, be it in dollars, miles, hours, against the contract and every leg of the contract.
Wow. Sounds pretty powerful.
Well, we like to think it is. It's cloud-based software on the back end, and then it's some device in the truck on the front end, and that device could be an ELD, could be our ELD, could be somebody else's ELD, and it can be a tablet for those who don't want or need an ELD. So you have something in the truck where the drivers can clock in and out, treat it as a time clock, tracks activities, tracks movement, tracks entries in and out of geofences. And then on the back end, of course, is cloud-based software. So all the dispatchers, managers, fleet administrators know what the plan is and know how we're performing against plan. So it isn't just a map with a bunch of dots on it. It's time charts with our contracts laid out chronologically and how we're performing against those plans.
Wow, fantastic. So the system isn't tied or married to any particular type of hardware in any truck?
No, it's not. And more of our customers are just using Android tablets. You know, there's some pending changes with FMCSA. They're broadening the exemption for ELDs, which means that the fleets that are forced to use ELDs, there's fewer of those, or there will be fewer of those come September. So we're seeing a lot of our new customers using nothing more than off-the-shelf tablets.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. We'll come back and look at some more details a little bit later. Chris, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about TPAs and FCE in particular?
Sure. Thank you, Tony. So a lot of companies who are government contractors are subject to various health and welfare benefit acts, and the predominant one in the mail hauling industry is the Service Contract Act. And it's a bit of a niche market, and it's a different ball of wax. And basically, for over 30 years, FCE has designed and administered health and welfare benefits for government contractors, subject to all the various health and welfare fringe benefit acts. So anytime there's a fringe rate tied to the hours the employees work that track back to a benefit program are typically when companies look to us for our services. As a third-party administrator, FCE works with its clients who come up with different benefit designs based on the client's benefit philosophy and what goals they're trying to accomplish. Many companies don't have a third-party administrator and do this tracking in-house. And that, as companies grow, that can become an administrative burden on the employer because every payroll they have to true up to the cost of the benefits. And if there's an overage, so if you have a fixed premium of $600 a month, and 1 month there's $700 worth of fringe, you have to be able to track and apply that difference into some sort of a cash sensitive benefit like a retirement plan or a health reimbursement account. Alternatively, if the driver works less hours and they don't have enough fringe coming in, they only have $550 that month, then the employer has to typically make a decision and say, okay, how do we want to cover this cost? We want to front the money to the carrier and work to get the employee do a payroll deduction later. And every time there's an overage or a shortage, there's that money has to go somewhere and is tracked typically on a payroll basis. So when companies outsource it, they're able to fully fund a health and welfare trust with their fringe dollars. And we're going to show an example coming up here in a minute. And then basically FCE takes over that burden. So typically the client fully funds a trust accurately, timely, and in full. And the plans are typically fully insured, self-funded, or level funded. And we present clients with various options for them to choose from. And one thing that makes FCE very unique is that each of our clients have a different benefit program. So we really do customize and tailor the benefits, not only for full-time employees, but also for part-time employees. And typically mail haulers are a little bit more challenging because they have different fringe rates based on the route that they're driving. So they might have a $4.11 fringe rate in the morning. In the afternoon, they might have a $4.55 fringe rate. So that's typically the challenges that we see. We also handle a lot of the other compliance headaches that a lot of companies have to adhere to. The Affordable Care Act, the 1095, the W-2 reporting. When you have a health and welfare plan, it falls under ERISA. And so you need to be compliant with your health and welfare trust. Typically, there's an independent trustee who acts as a co-fiduciary to the trust and handles a lot of the trust compliance, such as the fidelity bond, the 5500, the summary annual report that has to go out to employees on an annual basis. And then you also have other compliance challenges, such as being in compliance with the service contract. If there's an audit, we provide Department of Labor audit support through our in-house counsel, and they furnish the requested documents back to the employer. And then you basically have some other ERISA compliance, like your summary plan description, COBRA, you got to be HIPAA compliant. Your Medicare notices need to go out to employees. Typically, I believe it's every quarter. And so we handle all of those items as well.
Wow, that's a lot of services, Chris. It's a lot to do. All of these services together with the ability to kind of stabilize these kind of fluctuating rates and hours earned in the industry and keep benefits going, especially during the time that we're in right now. I mean, that's a huge service. Let me ask
one thing that's kind of unique is when a company does this themselves and they're doing this true up reporting, they're not able to take a fee for the work that they're doing for those services, all the true up reporting, and they're typically spending somebody's doing this either full-time or half-time or part-time. But when you outsource it to a third-party administrator, our fees come out of the health and welfare fringe dollars and are designed. And typically with our carrier relationships, our benefits are typically, we get much better, more competitive rates than your local United Healthcare broker or a Cigna broker or something like that. And so we basically design everything to be paid for out of the health and welfare fringe. So it makes companies more efficient, they gain efficiencies, and we're typically able to leverage our book of business for favorable renewals as companies go forward.
Wow. So basically, if I was a client, I could get all of these services at really no extra out-of-pocket cost to me, right?
Right. As the business owner, there's not an additional cost that'll hit your G&A for our services.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's great. Let's see. We looked at the other slides here before. Let me go on and I'll talk a little bit about the technical piece right now of how this kind of comes together. Thank you, Chris. How do we work? How do we calculate all this at FCE? And I've been in charge of the technical piece for a few years. And just a quick overview of how all of this is calculated. On every payroll cycle, our clients will use one of several methods to send us their data on which hours have been earned, under which contracts, at what rates, that sort of thing. At which case, and they send that to us in different formats, and that's okay, whatever format their system is able to produce. We will build our own translator for that to transform that data into a kind of a master template that we then import into our system. So FCE system is able to take that data and immediately start crunching it and taking care of all of the administrative processes through all of the departments that FCE has that specialize in different things like financial reporting and premiums payments and claims, customer service. Chris, do you want to talk for just a second about customer care? I think that's one piece that maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with is, all of these different benefits coming together. How does FCE handle questions from members of clients?
Sure. So FCE has a large bilingual customer service care center. And the unique thing when we put together and design benefit programs, when you have full-time employees and part-time employees on various benefit products like dental, like vision, like short-term disability, life insurance, major medical, prescriptions, same thing with part-time benefits, accident, hospital, x-ray lab. So when you have different eligibility classes, full-time employees that might be on a major medical plan, part-time employees that might be on ancillary and part-time medical plans, the employees have one number for all of their customer service needs. So it makes it very, it streamlines the consumer's experience. They're not looking around for various numbers for various vendors when they need some more information about vision or dental or medical, things like that.
Yeah, great. That's fantastic. So, so all of these different departments are supported through the data coming in to FCE from each client individually on a payroll cycle basis. Things do get a little more challenging when you have clients that have operations like mail haulers, where some of their employees may earn multiple fringe rates throughout the day. They could drive a route that would hit 3 different contracts, earn on 3 different fringe rates. How does that generates a lot of data that has to be handled very carefully and tracked. And that I think is, and of course FCE can accept that. That's where LoadTrek comes in as far as being able to track all of this. Joel, do you want to tell us a little bit how LoadTrek does this?
Yeah, so the people who use LoadTrek use it to organize their work, and in the context of a federal contractor who's also a trucking company, you'll load in your contracts. So it starts with loading in your contracts, and the contracts will consist of work or trips. And so step 1 is to get everything loaded into the system. And then step 2 is to take these contracts and the trips or the work contained within the contracts and chop it up or to assemble it into bite-sized pieces we call routes. For example, if you have a 2-hour trip, clearly that's not enough to keep a driver employed and happy, so you may want to assemble several of those trips. Or if you have a 23-hour trip, that's going to take more than one driver. So we assemble pieces of trips together so that the driver has a nice, stable work day, a predictable work environment, a stable work day, to keep the driver's hours somewhat even, both between each other and from day to day, which of course makes things like fringe administration way easier. So the end result is what you see on a map here, and I just pulled this out of one of our customers' databases. This is a map of a route, and this specific driver is on 2 different contracts with 2 completely different rates. The east-west from Milwaukee to Madison, Wisconsin is one contract, and that's just a back and forth. And actually, that's a big contract that moves back and forth all night between Madison and Milwaukee. And then the north-south from Milwaukee down to Chicago, that's yet another contract, and it's really just a piece of the contract. Either way, this driver's job is to start in Milwaukee, go down to Chicago and back, pick up in Milwaukee, go out to Madison and back to Milwaukee. It makes a nice day for the driver, and we have the ability to see exactly how many hours the driver worked, and therefore is due pay and benefits under each of those contracts. So if you'll flip over to the next slide here, Tony, I'll show you kind of what this looks like. I know this is a busy screen, but I'll kind of break this down for you. This is a graphic representation of the driver's activity and planned activity. So on this single screen, we can see that the driver worked 10.5 hours for this day on contract 53014. And for the company's purposes, that compares to an 11-hour bench. So we thought we gave the driver 11 hours worth of work, and we thought we gave the driver 356.3 miles worth of work. In actuality, the driver worked 10.5 hours, so that driver beat our expectations by 30 minutes, and the driver went 357 miles, so 0.7 of a mile over. That's a pretty good route. So from a company manager's perspective, I can see that this was within reason. This was within my expectations. But from a fringe administration perspective, when this automated upload occurs to FCE, we know automatically with no interaction at all that for this day, this driver worked 10.5 hours for this contract. And if it was more than one contract on an example, then we would have 2 or 3 or 4. Even for companies who get real creative and they mix up federal work with private so that the benefits packages is completely different. That's not a problem either. So what happens is within LoadTrek, you give FCE permission by setting up a special user so that FCE can automatically pull this information at whatever frequency they deem necessary. Once a minute, once an hour, once a day, once a week, really doesn't matter. And by virtue of the fact that you have set up and dispatched this work, it's already done for you. The hours and the calculations that are derived off of those hours, it's done automatically. You don't have to do anything.
Wow. That sounds like a very complete solution right there. That's pretty cool.
Well, it works well, and some of our customers may have 20 or 30 drivers, so it's not an insurmountable task to manage their fringe and their benefits and their payroll, but it certainly takes somebody's job out of a small company. But we also have clients that have thousands of drivers, and here this is clearly a really big task that requires a department. So this is how these companies can pretty much put this system on autopilot. Sure, there's occasions where drivers may call off at the last minute, and you'll have to do some last-minute dispatch to pause the automation to adjust to what's going on right now in my dispatch office. But that's how companies do it. It's that simple.
Hey, Joel, we have a question from Curtis Johnson.
Okay.
Great scheduling software. Would this work for security personnel as well as multiple locations?
Not knowing any more than I do, it probably would. Security personnel have a schedule, they have tasks, they have things they have to do during their shift. It probably would. I could follow up and make sure, but I'm reasonably comfortable that it would.
Okay, great.
Very cool. Excellent. Well, I think that brings us to really just talking about briefly the tie-in between our two systems. So FCE and LoadTrek have worked together to create a back-end direct connection between their system and ours that allows all of this data to flow through automatically. So just like Joel was saying, it's on autopilot. You can set it and forget it. And that's one less thing you have to worry about in terms of administrative burden, getting data over quickly, timely, and accurately to FCE so that benefits processing can happen without any delays. It's very important to keep everyone's medical benefits, especially in this time, as up to date as possible. So with that, I think we're recording this webinar for viewing later on YouTube. So we're going to go ahead probably and stop the recording, but then we'll stay online for any individual questions you may have. If you've registered for the webinar, we'll follow up by email to see if you have any questions. If you're watching this recorded, here are here's our contact information. And I'll leave that up for a little bit in case you want to get in contact with us. And yeah, we'll be happy to reach out.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
All right. Thank you.
Tony, thanks. Tony,